The dumbest golf mistakes ever made. Imagine having victory in your hands and losing it all because of one absurd decision. A misinterpreted rule, a moment of frustration, a mistake no one saw coming. Today, we relive the most humiliating, costly, and surreal moments that have been burned into golf history. And we're not talking about amateurs, but legends, world champions. This isn't just another ranking. It's a masterclass in how to ruin everything at the worst possible moment. Coral in the trap. Nick Faldo, 1994. Bali, 1994. The Englishman plays with surgical precision. Everything points to a dominant victory. But then, a gesture as simple as moving a piece of coral out of his way changes everything. As he prepares in the bunker, he moves that small obstacle without thinking twice. But the rule book thinks otherwise. That fragment was considered part of the course, and moving it even just to improve his stance was a serious infraction. No one noticed it at the time. Not Faldo, not the officials, not his rivals, until a camera caught it and a viewer at home reported it. In the final round, when Faldo was leading by 6 strokes, he was informed of his immediate disqualification. His championship completely collapsed, all because he didn't know one specific tournament rule. A flawless performance, ruined by a microscopic detail. Collapse on the coast. Bryson DeChambeau, 2021. Torrey Pines. U.S. Open. Bryson DeChambeau leads with his aggressive style and scientific approach. The defending champion seems to have the tournament under control. But in golf, logic doesn't always win. In the last 9 holes, the champion unravels. He can't find a single fairway. On the 17th hole, disaster strikes. A wild shot, a failed recovery attempt, and a swing so bad, the commentators are left speechless. 4 putts later, he signs a catastrophic quadruple bogey, from leader to tied for 26th, in just 1 hour. After the tournament, he tries to justify it as a series of bad decisions. But for millions of viewers, it was one of the greatest self-destructions ever seen in a major. The Fury of Daly. John Daly, 1998. Memphis, 1998. FedEx Street Jude Classic. The heat is unbearable, and John Daly's patience evaporates at the same pace as his mistakes. He reaches the 17th hole after a rough round, takes a 5-iron. He repeats the same shot, same club. That's when everything breaks. Literally. Daly snaps the club in 2, in front of a stunned crowd, frozen by the scene. But there's still one final act in this tragedy. After finishing the round, he forgets to sign his scorecard. The consequence? Disqualified. More than a technical mistake, it was a mental breakdown. Daly would later sum it up with brutal honesty. It was stupid. Another episode in his chaotic legend and one of the clearest acts of self-sabotage ever seen on a professional golf course. The Extra Club. Ian Woosnam, 2001. Royal Lytham and St. Anne's, 2001. Final round of the Open Championship. Ian Woosnam, Masters champion and European icon, begins the day tied for the lead. Everything is on the line. His opening drive is perfect. The pressure seems under control. But just a few steps later, his caddy stops him. He has something to say. And it's not good. There are 15 clubs in his bag. One more than allowed. Basic rule. Only 14 are permitted. Immediate result. A 2-stroke penalty. Before even hitting his second shot, Woosnam drops from leader to chaser. The reaction is explosive. He throws the extra club to the ground and verbally unloads on his caddy. You had one job. Just one. He finished tied for 3rd, only 4 shots behind the champion. An early penalty that, in hindsight, may have cost him the title and a spot on the Ryder Cup team. And although he chose not to fire his caddy right then, his patience didn't last long. 2 weeks later, He let him go for oversleeping and missing a tea time. A story where the mistake wasn't the player's, but he paid the price anyway. 7 seconds. A stolen eagle. Solheim Cup, 2021. Toledo, Ohio. Solheim Cup, 2021. The United States and Europe face off in the most prestigious team event in women's golf. Everything is tied. Every hole matters. And on the 13th, a scene unfolds that divides the golf world. Nelly Korda, world number 1, rolls an almost perfect putt. The ball stops on the edge of the hole, literally, right on the lip. Then, European player Madeleine Sackström walks up, picks up the ball, and hands it to Korda. A simple, everyday gesture. But there's a problem. The rules state that if a ball is hanging on the edge, the player has the right to wait up to 10 seconds to see if it drops in. Sackström did it after 7, 3 seconds too early. After reviewing the footage, the officials apply the rule to the letter. Korda is awarded the eagle. 1 hole, 1 point. That would make the difference in the final outcome. The atmosphere turned tense, uneasy. Even Korda seemed uncomfortable with the decision. Sackström, in disbelief, said she never would have picked up the ball if she thought it had any chance of falling in. What should have been a thrilling duel turned into a debate over rules, fairness, and common sense. An instinctive action that changed the result and went down as one of the most controversial moments in Solheim Cup history. 6 puts, 1 nightmare. Ernie Els. Masters 2016. Augusta Nacional 2016. The most sacred tournament in golf begins. Ernie Els, nicknamed the Big Easy for his graceful swing, steps up to start his round. First hole. He misses the green, but after a solid chip, leaves the ball just over a meter from the hole. But then, something inexplicable happens. The first putt lips out, the second 2, the third, same result, then the 4th, and the 5th. The crowd falls silent. The commentators can't say a word. 6 putts from 1 meter. He records a 9 on a par 4. Els walks off the green with a blank stare, as if he's just woken from a nightmare. Later, he would say his body simply wouldn't respond, that it was like having snakes in the head. It was one of the most bewildering scenes ever witnessed at Augusta. A brutal example of how, even among the greats, the mental game can destroy everything on the very first hole. The chip that didn't count. Annika Sørenstam, Solheim Cup 2000. Scotland, 2000. The Solheim Cup reaches a boiling point. The European and American teams are playing for more than points. Pride, reputation, history. On the 13th hole, Annika Sørenstam executes a perfect chip. The ball rolls, kisses the edge of the hole, and drops cleanly. Flawless birdie. The Swede celebrates. Europe exhales. But the celebration lasts only seconds. The Americans, Kelly Robbins, and Captain Pat Bradley protest. They claim Annika played out of turn. There's no written penalty for that in match play, but the rules allow the opponents to demand that the shot be replayed. And they do. Annika must hit the same chip again. Now under pressure. The ball doesn't drop. The point switches sides. The match ends in a tie, and the spirit of the tournament is marked by controversy. For years, the debate continued. Was it fair play or a cold tactical move that crossed an ethical line? The only clear thing is that on that hole, at that moment, a scar was left that still divides opinions. A perfect chip, erased by a rule and a decision. A jungle in Texas. Kevin Na, 2011. TPC San Antonio, 2011. Kevin Na faces the 9th hole. A seemingly routine par 4. But what's about to begin isn't a round of golf. It's an odyssey. His tee shot flies straight into the woods, dense, tangled, impenetrable. The logical choice. A safe shot back to the fairway. But Na chooses to be a hero. And the jungle doesn't forgive. His second shot goes deeper into the trees. The third ricochets off a trunk and hits him in the leg. He tries a left-handed shot, misses, completely. While the other players watch in disbelief, now battles trees, branches, roots, and his own frustration. It takes him over 10 minutes to get out. The most surprising part? The rest of his round was brilliant. Without that disaster, he would have been in contention for the title. But history doesn't remember. Those 17 holes, it remembers the nightmare of the ninth. A brutal lesson that in golf, sometimes the best decision is the simplest one. The debut that ended in disqualification. Michelle V, 2005. California, 2005. Michelle V, the young prodigy of women's golf, makes her long-awaited professional debut at the Samsung World Championship. The stage is perfect. Her game is solid. She finishes in 4th place, earning respect, recognition, and a guaranteed paycheck. But while the world celebrates her arrival on the tour, one detail changes everything. A journalist watching the broadcast notices something odd during the 3rd round. The spot where VA resumed play after declaring an unplayable lie seems a bit too close to the hole. Officials are notified. Review. Analysis. Confirmed. Incorrect drop. Infraction. And since she had already submitted her scorecard without adding the penalty stroke, the ruling is automatic. Disqualified. 4th place gone, the prize money gone, and the general feeling is devastating. Professional golf doesn't forgive, not even its future stars. What was supposed to be the start of a legendary career turned instead into a harsh lesson in rules, scrutiny, and the unforgiving fine print. Rage in the Desert, Sergio Garcia, 2019-4, Saudi Arabia, 2019. The European Tour lands at Royal Greens Golf Club, already surrounded by controversy over its location. And as if the atmosphere weren't tense enough, Sergio Garcia decides to write his own chapter of chaos. Frustrated with the condition of the greens, the Spaniard Masters champion and Ryder Cup icon loses control. He drags his feet across several putting surfaces, leaving marks and damage that affect the players coming behind him. Not once, not twice, in at least 5 different holes. The complaint is filed. The footage reviewed. The sabotage confirmed. The organizer's response is swift and firm. Disqualification for unsportsmanlike conduct. But the episode doesn't end there. Just a day earlier, cameras had already caught him venting his anger in a bunker after a poor shot. A scene more fitting for a frustrated child than a seasoned champion. He later apologized, but the damage to his reputation and to the respect of his peers was already done. In a sport where behavior means everything, his outburst left a mark that's hard to erase. Argument with no way out. Bryson DeChambeau, 2020. Ohio, Memorial Tournament 2020. Bryson DeChambeau, the golf scientist, obsessed with data and angles, finds himself in trouble on the 15th hole, a demanding par 5. His drive ends up in a creek. So far, all within reason. But the real conflict begins with the next shot. The ball heads toward a boundary fence. The officials rule, out of bounds, lost stroke. For most players, that would be the end of it. Not for Bryson. He challenges the ruling, requests a second opinion. He gets it. Same result. The ball is out. He insists, mentions precedents, cites examples, drops Phil Mickelson's name, all in an effort to overturn what's clearly shown on camera. After exhausting every argument, he finally has to accept reality. He's playing his 7th shot. Final result, a 10 on the scorecard. Tournament over. Missed cut. What remained was a tense, uncomfortable scene where competitive passion crossed the line of common sense. Once again, DeChambeau's talent was overshadowed by his inability to accept the obvious. The price of a towel. Craig Stadler, 1,987. Torrey Pines, 1,987. Craig Stadler, nicknamed the Walrus for his sturdy build and unmistakable mustache, is putting together a great performance at the Andy Williams San Diego Open. Everything points to a close finish, with real chances of victory. During the 3rd round, his ball comes to rest under a tree. To make the shot, he needs to kneel down. The ground is damp from rain, so he makes a seemingly logical decision. He places a towel down to avoid dirtying his pants. The shot is legal. The act, seemingly harmless. No one says a word. Stadler finishes in second place. But then, a viewer calls the tournament officials after seeing a televised replay. He claims using the towel violated the rule against building a stance. They review it. Confirmed. And since Stadler hadn't added the two-stroke penalty to his card the next day, he's disqualified. But here comes the ironic twist. The viewer who reported it thought he was watching live Sunday coverage, not a replay from Saturday. Had he known, he never would have called. And so, by simply trying not to dirty his pens, Stadler lost the chance to win, his runner-up finish, and nearly $40,000. Prohibited warm-up. Julie Inkster, 2010. Portland, 2010. Safeway Classic. Just 3 shots off the lead, her experience and consistency keep her in serious contention for the title. But on the 10th hole, play comes to a halt, a 30-minute delay. Trying to stay loose, Inkster slips a weighted donut onto her club and makes a few practice swings, a common move on the driving range. But in the middle of an official round, it's illegal. A spectator notices, calls it in, the footage is reviewed, and the ruling falls coldly. Disqualified for using a training device during play. Inkster, stunned, explains that she was simply trying to stay active during the delay, not to gain any advantage. But the rule is clear. A simple warm-up routine, a standard piece of equipment, and a champion out of the tournament. Another reminder that in golf, even the smallest lapses come at the highest cost, the score that wasn't. Roberto de Vicenzo, 1,968. Augusta Nacional, 1,968. Roberto de Vicenzo, the Argentine legend, signs a brilliant round at the Masters. It's his 45th birthday. But then, a fatal scorecard error comes to light. On the 17th hole, his playing partner, Tommy Aaron, recorded a 4 instead of the 3 de Vicenzo actually made, and de Vicenzo, without carefully checking the card, signed it. In golf, if you sign for a higher score than you made, that's the one that counts. Officially, de Vicenzo finished with a 66 one-shot behind the leader. No playoff. No chance at the green jacket. His reaction was as raw as it was iconic. "What a stupid I am." A phrase that became legendary. A tiny oversight that cost him not only a title, but the immortality he deserved. Collapsed Carnoustie. Jean van de Velde, 1,999. Carnoustie, 1,999. The Open Championship. Jean van de Velde, a relatively unknown Frenchman outside the European circuit, reaches the 18th hole with a 3-shot lead. He only needs a double bogey to win the oldest tournament in the world. Glory is just 1 hole away. But what happens next is a masterclass in how to destroy a sure victory shot by shot. First, instead of playing safely, Van de Velde pulls out the driver. The ball veers right, brushing the water, but miraculously stays in play. Second mistake. Instead of laying up, he decides to attack the green with a 2-iron. The result? It bounces off the grandstands and rolls back into thick rough. Third shot, straight into the water. And then, the image that will live forever, Van de Velde taking off his shoes, stepping into the creek to see if he can play it from the water. He finally takes a drop, hits another errant shot from the bunker, and somehow makes a triple bogey that forces a playoff. He loses. It wasn't a lack of skill, it was a chain of absurd decisions under pressure. Jean van de Velde went down in history not for his talent, but for one of the most spectacular collapses in professional sports. In golf, precision, power, and strategy aren't always enough. Sometimes, the greatest enemy isn't on the course. It's in the player's mind. Tiny mistakes, impulsive choices, or simple oversights have destroyed careers, ruined tournaments, and rewritten history. Because in this game, the line between glory and disaster is thinner than a mischecked scorecard. Thank you for watching. And if you want to keep exploring the most unbelievable side of professional golf, there's another video waiting for you on screen right now.